Hi, I'm Michelle Matthews, and I am the Human Resources Manager here at the library, and I've been with the library for 4 years. I just celebrated my 4th anniversary. I joined the Air Force when I was 18 years old. I was a student at Bowling Green State University, and I was not doing well in my college studies. And I have an older brother, and I had always heard my mom say, mostly to him, but I heard it, and it was in my spirit, was you go to school, you go to work, or you live somewhere else. And so when I knew that I was not planning to go back for spring quarter, then I joined the Air Force. This was in 1980. And so I joined the Air Force. I left April 15th, 1980. And I had a college friend that was also from my same high school. And she was also not returning to school. So we joined together on the buddy system. I just thought it was the best branch for me. I didn't see myself in the Marines or the Army. And I'm from Ohio, so I had never been around the water that much. So the Navy didn't really appeal, or the Coast Guard. And the Air Force recruiter had come to my high school. And so it was the Air Force for me. I didn't really, well, my father was in the Air Force and my brother was in the Army. And so I wasn't really sure what to expect, but it fit me very well. I was very happy with my choice and with my decision. And I served for 8 years. So basic training for the Air Force, pretty much for everyone, is at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And I left Lackland and I went to Biloxi, Mississippi, to Keesler Air Force Base. And I was in training to become a Morse code operator in the intelligence field, and I didn't like it. And so I ended up going to Lowry Air Force Base in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado. And I became an intelligence operations specialist. And I really like that. So the Air Force is different from, I think, some like the Army in particular, I think. And so you are assigned, each location has different units. So my first permanent base location was at George Air Force Base in California. And I was with the 37 Tactical Fighter Wing. I was in intelligence. I worked with air crews there. The pilots flew the F-4G Wild Weasel planes. It was a great introduction, and I really liked that assignment. And when I left there, I went to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. And there I was a Latin American area specialist. And I was with the 480th Reconnaissance Technical Group. And so I did a lot of top secret things in there with Central and South American countries. And while I was there, I got married and we moved to England, and we went to our AF Mildenhall, and I was assigned to the 306 Strategic Wing. And I worked with pilots who flew real world missions there. And so it was a great assignment. And then I got out there. I ended my career while I was in England. So I can talk about in general terms. So when I was in California, I did enemy aircraft recognition. I briefed pilots on missions. I debriefed them when they came back from missions about what they saw. I knew a lot about surface-to-air missiles and air-to-air missiles and different types of aircraft. And so it was a really fun. Like our squadron motto was, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. And I have kept that with me like ever since. When I went to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, it was more, I worked in a vault. Well, I worked in a vault also when I was in California, but we worked in a vault, a big vault. And it was different types of methods, but I tracked air forces in some small Central America countries and South America countries. They were fairly small. But I tracked their inventory of their air forces and briefed our commanders on that. And then when I went to the Strategic Air Command, and I was at the 306 Strategic Wing, at Lake and Heath, primarily I briefed pilots before real world missions. I debriefed them when they came back, and I gave current intelligence briefings to our base commander and his staff. I mean, not our squad, our wing commander and his staff. Yeah, it was a great job. I really enjoyed my time in the Air Force, and there are days when I wish I had stayed, but it was a good time for me to transition out. I was married to another Air Force member. We had a 4-year assignment to England, and as we were preparing to come back, it was really trying to find a place we could both go together, that we wanted to go. That becomes a little more difficult the more you rise up in rank. And also it was a reduction in force. And so I was given, it was like I had to decide if I wanted to re-enlist like within 30 days or I had to get out in 30 days. And I had a newborn at home that was like 4 months old. So I was really torn and decided that it was time for me to separate. We worked together at Langley. He was in a different division from me, but we met there. He got out. So when we left England, I got out while we were in England, and then we were reassigned to Bill Air Force Base in Northern California, north of Sacramento. He worked with the SR-71 program there, the Blackbird. And so then there was a second reduction in force, and so he got out at that point. So reduction in force was really, they were deciding the Cold War was over. East and West Germany had been reunited, that they didn't need as many people in the military. It was under the first president, George Bush. And so they started realigning bases, closing bases. And so they didn't need as many people. And so it was, you can either re-enlist right now or you needed to get out. And when my husband got out, they were actually offering financial incentives for people to get out. And so then we moved back to Ohio. Yeah, when I got out, I was 26. And then we were in California for 2 or 3 years, so I was probably 29 or so when we moved back to Ohio. Some things that have been useful for me in civilian life was, I think, a confidence that I can do anything. The military really takes 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and oftentimes you're given a lot more responsibility than you would be in a civilian world. And so it really built my confidence that I could do pretty much anything. I didn't know anything about aircraft or dorsal fins or engines or missiles when I entered, but I knew quite a bit when I came out. And so that was really good. I think the skills is just working with people. You meet all kinds of people from all over the country. I've worked with people internationally. And so I just think really understanding of people and knowing that we're more in common than we are apart and different. So I grew up in Dayton, and so I went to high school in Dayton. And so when we got out the second time, when my husband got out, my ex-husband now, but when we came back, we moved to Ohio, and we were both able to find jobs fairly quickly, and we just stayed here. And so I've always been in public service. When I was in California, I worked with a program, a job training program that worked with at-risk adolescents. So I worked with teen parents and I worked with kids who were incarcerated, teaching them employability skills and helping them to get jobs and transition out. And so when I went to Dayton, I got a job with a similar program, doing similar type of skills. I worked in a high school with at-risk students, helping them to make that transition from school to college to military or to work. And it was just a great fit for me. It was something I really enjoyed. And then I got a job in human resources as a human resources manager. I worked for a suburban city up in Dayton. Then I went and worked for Montgomery County. And in 2019, my mom had gotten sick and she passed away. And my kids were grown at that point, and so I wasn't tied to Dayton. And I was a library kid. I spent lots of time in the library that was a half a block from my house as a child. I knew my librarians, Mrs. Sykes and Mrs. Turner, and so when I saw this opportunity, it just seemed like a great fit for me. And I was fortunate enough to be hired here as the HR manager. No, I thought my son might for a long time, but he chose a different route. So neither of my kids have joined the military. So in addition to really learning how to work with people, my first assignment at George Air Force Base, it was so diverse. And so I learned a lot about diversity in that assignment. We were from all over the place. I had a boss that was Filipino. I worked with a guy that was Samoan. We had kids from the East Coast, or young people from the East Coast, the Midwest, and the West Coast. People from different economic status, people who really struggled in their families at home. And one of the captains I worked with, his father was a TV executive, and he would fly places in a private plane on a weekend. And so that was an experience that has always sustained me, of working with people who are diverse and just really connected. Like, we really connected to one another. One of my good friends is Hispanic. We're still friends today. He lives in El Paso, Texas. And so I think that was something that was really important, particularly growing up in Dayton. Dayton was pretty black and white. Not a lot of other people there at that time. And so I always appreciate the military for that experience and helping me to really understand people and accept people for who they are. I keep in contact with quite a few people that I've worked with over the years. Now, we don't talk to each other on the phone a whole lot. Right now you connect with people through Facebook or Instagram and stuff, but I do have military colleagues that I stay in touch with. Places I felt connected to, I was really fortunate. I had great assignments. The opportunity to stay in Colorado. I lived in Southern California, Northern California. Virginia is a great place. We were down in the Newport News, Hampton, Virginia area. And then I lived in England for 4 years. And so I had the opportunity to travel and see a lot of the country. I think the other thing the military gave me was my love of travel. And so I love traveling and going to new places and meeting new people. And I really think that came from the military. And so those are some things. My friend and I went in with on the buddy program, because they ask you where you want to be assigned. And she had all warm places, Florida, Texas, Arizona, California. And she ended up at Minot, North Dakota.